Google Plus had a data breach, and then all of a sudden Google decides to retire Google Plus. What do you think about this, Raven?
You know, when I saw that, I think I saw it in the morning, like, because I think it was announced like early in the morning.
Yeah.
Or I can't remember, but I remember like literally just wanting to just smash my head on the desk and be like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, oh yeah, we had this huge data breach. Hey, we're not gonna have Google Plus anymore. Like, you fixed the bug, but you're gonna kill it. I mean, clearly it's become a liability to the company. It never made money to begin with.
Yeah,
but,
and I mean, they discovered that this bug was available in their API. For those of you who haven't heard about this, the Google Plus API, where it gave basically something like 440 apps that were built to access Google Plus's API, unmitigated access to Google Plus users' private profile data, like phone numbers and other things that had been hidden from public consumption of your Google Plus page. Google says that 550,000 people were affected by this, but both Raven and I are kind of skeptical of that number, given the fact that, what was it? That anyone who used the Google Open Auth.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it was the Google Open Auth. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain from what I saw that it was when you would sign in with your Google account. Now, it might not apply when you sign up for something through a website.
Yeah.
But that all should be the same API.
One would think, yeah.
Yeah, but it could be that apps can access like something special that like the website can't because they're like an Android app, for example.
Right.
So it's entirely possible, but either way, I do not believe only 500-some thousand people were affected. There's no way. You're telling me between 440 apps, only 500-and-some thousand people are affected? Considering every single person with a Google account has a Google Plus account, you're lying to me.
Yeah, and the fact that this vulnerability was like publicly available and exploitable from 2015 until March of 2018, where it's like, you know, only 550,000 people's profiles were affected. I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, that's impossible. I know no one uses Google Plus, but you use features that Google Plus is, essentially.
Yeah.
So you use it whether or not you want to. Now, some of us have moved away from Google for everything.
Yeah, it's a load off my mind to know that I'm not using Google's products and services on a daily basis anymore. But so here's the thing. They decided to not disclose this vulnerability even after it was closed, like the loophole was closed. And they briefed the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, and he okayed the decision to not disclose this vulnerability. And I find this to be incredibly irresponsible on the part of Google, and it violates what little trust in Google that I had left. I mean, Raven, you and I were talking about this like a couple days before this news broke. I was like, has there ever been like a major data breach from Google? And I think we came to the conclusion that we didn't know of any. And then come to find out, this happened.
They've had some over the years, but they've always disclosed it.
Right.
Or it's always been like, we had a data breach, but, you know, all the stuff's encrypted, so, you know, it's fine. They just have a big blob of data they can't do anything with unless they have a supercomputer laying around.
Right.
But this is different. This is... And in fairness, the data that was leaked is stuff Google doesn't want other people to have, because not just the legal aspect, but because that's how they make their money. They don't want other people having access to the thing that allows them to make money.
Right, exactly. This is the stuff they sell to people.
Yeah, so the fact that you could just create an app and then just pull everything is just terrifying.
You don't even need to create an app. You just needed to get an API key. And
well, you still needed to get people to sign up for it to get it.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you needed to create something. But, I mean, just imagine, and the apps aren't safe. You know, all the time, you know, well, maybe apps on Android are safer than some places, but, you know, how do we know that any of those apps weren't compromised?
Right. I mean, the thing that really boggles my mind is, like, when stuff like this happens, and, you know, even if it's, like, unwittingly vacuumed up by a third party, like a developer, and they don't know that they're getting this amount of data about someone, how do we trust them as stewards of our data? I mean, and we barely even have acknowledged that they have our consent to get that information from Google. Like, this kind of stuff just blows my mind. We live in the absolute wild west on the internet, and it's terrifying because, you know, when your data is being just exchanged on a you know, on the black market, or even just through vulnerabilities like this that nobody knows about for years, it's like, what do we do about this, you know? I don't know. And then Google decides, oh, hey, within literally hours of announcing this, they're like, oh, here's a new lineup of Pixel devices so you don't remember about our data breach.
Yeah, that blew me away.
Oh my God.
They planned that.
They did it on purpose.
Truthfully, speaking of the CEO, considering he okayed it, and you know me, you know how my thoughts on business and government and everything else should work.
Yeah.
Sundar Pichai, I don't actually know how to say his name, so I apologize for completely butchering your name. Charges should be brought up against him for okaying this.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not biggest fan of regulation and various other things. Like, I don't really like the government to meddle because the government can never do anything right. So why on earth would you ever want them to meddle? But there are some times where their existence, like, they fulfill a purpose and they should actually do the thing that they're for. And this is one of those situations. Like,
yeah.
Stuff should be brought in to rein in these companies. Not just rein them in, but put these people in jail. And not for like a year, 10, 20, 30 years. Because even, let's just say it is 500,000 people were affected.
Yeah.
It's 500,000 people's lives who could potentially be ruined. Screw that. Put them in jail.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean,
this is ridiculous. And there's no, I guess the problem is with this whole thing, there's no consequences, and they know it.
Right. They don't care.
So why would they bother changing?
Right.
Like, this just goes to show. They announced their Google Pixel. It did nothing but push it down, and now no one's talking about it. Now they're talking about, like, oh my gosh, the new phone, it looks so great.
It has a notch.
And then they have a thing like the Facebook portal.
Yeah.
It literally does the same thing. Like, none of these companies are innovating. I swear they're all like one major company at this point.
Oh, yeah.
They just work together. Like, hey, we're making this. Oh, sweet. You know what? Let's make one and let's announce it like 2 days apart. There is no way that either of these projects were a secret to each other.
Yeah, no. Well, and I mean, I completely agree with your point about, like, none of these companies are innovating anymore. None of these companies are behaving in a way that's responsible because they don't have a reason to behave responsibly. They, you know, if they can, like, make more money by behaving irresponsibly, then that's what they're going to do. I mean, it's like the Jake Paul syndrome of like tech companies, and, you know, Google can do this, or Equifax can leak like people's social security numbers, and
nothing happens.
Nothing happens. And it's like, there has to be consequences for stuff like this. If there isn't consequences, then this is just going to keep happening. And, you know, we have to, like, actually stand up to these companies and tell them, look, we need to be able to trust you with our data. If you want to make money from our data, from selling it to, you know, whoever, if that even should be allowed, first of all, but then you have to be trustworthy, and you have to, like, take responsibility and do things that, like, provide, like, security and not just, I don't know. I get worked up about this. This makes me furious.
No, it's a valid thing to get worked up over. I mean, there are no consequences for them. There are none.
None.
There's no consequences whatsoever. And it needs to happen. And I don't even care which, you know, political side of the spectrum you're on. It needs to happen. It is something that absolutely needs to happen. And I don't care which side of the political spectrum actually does something about it.
No, I don't either.
One of them needs to do something about it. Someone in Congress for the United States needs to do something about it. They need to be held accountable. And, you know, it's only been a few days, so it is possible that something might come of it. But personally, since he okayed it, you know, there are laws in place to, you know, because a lot of people go, well, you know, businesses are shielded, like they shield the individual so-and-so. Not when someone knowingly commits a crime.
Right.
And he knowingly committed a crime, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is a cover-up.
Yes. He knowingly did it, and then admitted to knowingly doing it.
Yeah.
So
because there are no consequences.
Yeah, there's no consequences. Like, no, put him in jail.
Yeah.
And, you know, when everyone argues because, you know, and they scream that, you know, it's just you're oppressing him or, you know, whatever other kind of crazy thing you want to do to defend him, it's like, no, this just has to do with the fact that he breached everyone's trust and just, oh, God, it's so bad. And there's nothing. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
That's the worst of it.
Yeah.
We could sit here and we can yell about it all we want and it won't matter.
Right. Well, you know, the thing is, it's like in the last podcast, I talked about Amazon's, you know, $15 an hour raise, right? And I talked about how Bernie Sanders had done this, you know, called out Jeff Bezos, you know, all this stuff. And people in the comments were like, oh my God, you're a socialist if you have anything to do with Bernie Sanders. It's like, no, dude, like that's not what it is. Because if you listen to the podcast just before that one, I talked about how Ted Cruz, I was really impressed by how he was grilling Google's chief privacy officer, Keith Ehrenreich, about how Google was suppressing the Dragonfly memo, about how they were trying to, you know, engage with China's censorship regime. So it's like, I don't take sides politically. I believe what I believe, and I will work with people on either side of the aisle who agree with me on whatever topic I'm passionate about. I don't care what party you are from. And that's what is most important here, because this kind of stuff has to be addressed. If it's not addressed, then we live in anarchy online. And we have to be able to trust the companies that unwittingly soak up our data and collect all this information about us, whether it's Google or like these invisible advertising agencies or any of this stuff, because all this data, it will eventually be leaked. All of it will. You know, if any of it can be, it will all be leaked. That's how you have to approach this. And if there are no consequences, then people won't take security seriously.
No, you're absolutely right. There's too much you know, my side this, my side that, blah blah blah. You know, people don't really want to tackle stuff anymore. They just want to be right.
Exactly.
And that's not how the world works. Well, it kind of is at the moment, but that's kind of why the world's kind of in such disarray, because that's not how it's supposed to work.
Right. Well, you know, the reason that I wanted to have you on the podcast, Raven, is because we're friends, and like we have a difference of opinion quite often, especially when it comes to politics. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, we respect each other, and we're able to talk about what we believe, why we believe it, and we don't call each other names. We don't call each other stupid. That is like the quintessential hallmark of being able to have a conversation, is like having respect for someone, even if you disagree. And that's super duper important. I'm really passionate about that, if you can't tell.
No, you should be. Well, and you know, I'm sure people now are thinking, wait, this has gotten kind of political, but this is a very political situation.
Yeah.
Here. Because people are going to defend Google because Google is a big leftist company, for example.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I'm not big on regulation. You know, that's kind of my thing. I believe it should exist. I'm not one of those crazy people. Like, regulation should exist, but I don't like duplicate regulation because that's just a waste of everyone's time. But in this case, I don't even think regulation needs to be necessary. I think a step above regulation, and that is actual criminal charges can be brought forth against a company or persons of a company. Because like, he literally okayed a massive data breach cover-up.
Yeah.
And criminal charges should be brought against him because he okayed it. He's at the top, and he willingly and knowingly allowed it. Because how are you supposed to protect yourself from this?
Right.
Like, for 3 years, your data's been out there floating around, and you don't even know, and someone can buy it, and then next thing you know... Because remember, like, you and me, we have YouTube channels, which means we had to give Google our social security number because of the whole ads and everything.
Yep.
Or you need a tax identification number, but unless you have a business, you don't have that. That means, technically, if you've ever done that, someone could have your social security number.
It's terrifying.
It's terrible, but no one cares, and not even about the political thing, because they perfectly pushed it aside with their new Pixel devices and their new Chrome device. And by the way, that Pixel tablet or Pixel Surface, what's it called? The Pixel something?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's a tablet that they sell a $200 keyboard for, which I find beautiful, because I'll never understand how a chiclet keyboard can cost $200.
Yeah.
It's made of plastic. You know, I have several keyboards, and as you know, I'm very fond of saying that the greatest keyboard ever made is a Model M. If you've never used one, you just won't understand. But I also have, like right now, I have my Corsair hooked up. This one was about $170, and I've had it for 6 years. It's not an RGB, but it was expensive back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. You know, it has a steel case. It's really, really nice. But these things are like $200, and they're made of plastic. Like, how can they be $200? How could that thing cost $200?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they're sturdy, don't get me wrong. They're not made out of, like, some cheap bendable plastic or anything like that, but it's still plastic.
But we want to know what you think. Are you more upset about the data breach, or are you more upset about the $200 keyboard? Leave us a comment. What you just heard is an excerpt of the Off Topical podcast. You can head over to offtopical.net and subscribe right now. The feed is freely available, and you know, it's a lot of fun. So why don't you just come over and hit that subscribe button? There's no real subscribe button. You got to use like an app or something. Anyway, podcast. Come get it.